As Father's Day approaches, it seems like an opportune time to have a conversation about what is the legal definition of father, or of parent, for that matter, in the state of New York. A definition, by the way, which is constantly evolving and expanding. Biological father. That is a man who contributes to half the genetic makeup of a child. Legal father. This is who the state recognizes as the father of the children. And the state creates certain presumptions. For example, if the couple is married, there is a presumption of legitimacy. And that is the mother or father, the husband and wife, will be considered the legal parents of the child. Well, what if they're not married? What if an unmarried woman has a child? Well, then she may need an official act of the state, court intervention, to determine paternity. If she is in agreement with the father, they could sign a paternity affidavit or petition the court and get a court order as to paternity. But what if there is no agreement? Then she may have to go to the court and seek a DNA test, a genetic test, to determine parenthood. And what happens with these testing, the genetic testing can exclude a man from being the biological father, or it can create the legal presumption of paternity if the test demonstrates a 99% or more probability that he is the biological father of the children. And now there are other ways, conventional and new, in which the state gets involved in determining parenthood.
Excellent, Joe. Thank you. So there's always adoption, which is a wonderful way to become a legal parent. And there are a lot of different types of adoptions. There are agency adoptions, there are private placement adoptions, there are foreign adoptions, and there are step-parent or second parent adoptions, which is really what I want to focus on today, because that's a very special process and proceeding where both children and parents can feel like they're acting on their own accord to make a family, to make a legal parentage relationship. But just let me say, first of all, that on the other side of this coin, New York started a procedure about 2 years ago whereby children who were adopted can in fact obtain their original birth certificates when they reach adulthood. And obviously what that will enable them to do is find out who their biological parents are. So that's just sort of a note on the side from the child's perspective and perhaps the biological father's perspective as well. But in second parent adoptions, and we do a number of these type of adoptions in the office, it's basically someone who has no legal rights to be deemed a father, and certainly no biological rights to be deemed a father. It's often a situation where someone is married to the child's mother, or father for that matter, and wants to become the legal parent. And that can be done for a number of reasons. Medical decisions can only be made by a legal parent. Obviously, if something happens to the other legal parent, nobody can take the child away from someone who is in fact a second parent. But most importantly, it allows families who would otherwise not have a legal father in the picture to become a full unit as a family, be it traditional or modern. We do a lot of same-sex couples who go through the adoption process as a second parent adoption. And there's also a number of ways that couples can go through the process as well in New York. And I'll let Meredith talk about that.
And additionally, we have a new surrogacy statute in New York as of February of last year. And that allows for this concept of an intended parent to come into play. So rather than the parents that we've discussed previously, we now have these intended parents who may not be genetically related to the child, or they may be a surrogate who's carrying a child that she's not biologically related to. And this whole new concept now in New York is allowed, which had not been allowed previously prior to February of 2021. So that's really interesting.
Very interesting. So in addition to what Joe and Meredith have been talking about, two more ways that the issue of parenthood could come up. And this is more in the area of court intervention, more my arena where we deal with it. The first is, and this directly talks about the second parent adoption, the first is the landmark 2016 landmark case of Brooke B. This is where the state's highest court held that an individual did not have to have neither a biological or adoptive relationship to a child to be declared the parent. This case came about after many years of same-sex couples petitioning the court on this issue. And in the opinion of many, New York has lagged behind other states which have been much more progressive on the issue. This court held that an individual, if they could demonstrate and present clear and convincing evidence that the parties had entered into an agreement to conceive and raise the child together, that person could have standing. That person would finally be able to go to the court and petition not only for parenting time and access, but actually could petition for custody itself. Final point, a very interesting one, equitable estoppel. What is equitable estoppel? Well, it's a doctrine typically invoked when, for example, a man has held himself out as the parent's child for 4 to 5 years, taken care of the child, maybe supported the children, and then determines that he wants to deny paternity or disturb that paternity award. And so he orders or seeks court intervention to get a DNA test to disprove paternity. Well, even if that DNA test disproves that he is the biological father, the courts have consistently held that it is not in the children's best interest for that father-child relationship to be disturbed, nor the financial obligation for this individual to support the children. Now that seems like a stark remedy, and someone who is not the biological father to be continued to be deemed as the father of the children. But what many don't understand or don't know is that the doctrine works both ways. What do I mean by that? The father can also petition under this doctrine to be declared the father of the children. And that was the issue before the court several years ago, where the court had to deal with that, as well as conflicting and competing legal presumptions. This man individually petitioned the court to be declared the father. The woman in this case was married to another individual when she had sexual relations with this man and had twins. And right from the beginning, right from birth, she held him, the father, not the husband, as the father of these children, built a bond, an emotional relationship with the children, and that he continued in that to take care of the children, be held out as the father for 8 to 9 years. And then she cut off communication with the individual, cut off any access that he had to the children. So he petitioned the court for, under the doctrine of equitable distribution, to be declared the father of the children, and the court upheld it under that theory. The doctrine of equitable distribution equitable estoppel cannot be underestimated. Okay, we talked earlier about the legal presumption of legitimacy. Why? This woman was married at the time that she had these children. Why was the husband not considered the father of these children? Well, the court reasoned that this woman acknowledged that this other individual was the father. She held him out as the father. He built a bond with these children. He supported these children. And these actions, the court said, rebutted the presumption of legitimacy. And what's really important is here, the court didn't even order a DNA test because that was not what they were considering. And so this case is sort of symbolic of where we are in New York. The court indicated that the emotional bond created here was more important than biology. So I think that as this Father's Day approaches, we've kind of covered all of the areas in which parenthood is involved, the definition of parenthood, and the definition of what it is to be a father.
And we wish all of our fathers, whether actual right now, intended for the future, or perhaps proposed at some point, a great Father's Day.